Here I am, getting ready to do my beekeeping presentation today. Let's see what happens. Start the camera. So I do record my presentations so that way I can improve in the future, because I do the second grade program for the schools in Tallapoosa County also. Ask me.
I was going to tell you, I know that if a honeybee stings someone, it dies immediately.
It does.
But a queen bee can keep stinging without dying.
That's right. So, I will tell you why. Because a worker bee, which is a female bee, she has a barbed stinger. And so when that barb gets under your skin, it actually pulls her stinger out, which pulls out her abdomen. It pulls her guts out with it. And that's why she dies. But a queen bee doesn't have a barb. Her stinger is more like a needle, and she can sting you repeatedly as much as she needs to. So you can see these honeybees here. You can see that bees are really fuzzy. And then you can see this one here on the right-hand side. He's got his proboscis out, and that's his straw-like tongue, and he's sucking up some nectar. They take that pollen, they use that for bee bread, and they use that for their food, along with making the nectar into honey. So here on the anatomy of a bee, we know, again, that bees are insects. They have 6 legs, 4 leg, a middle leg, and a hind leg. We know they have 3 body parts. They have their head, and in their head, they've got, first off, can anybody tell me how many eyes a bee has? Do y'all know? Bees have 5 eyes. That's pretty cool. So they have the 2 compound eyes, the big eyes, they are on the side of their head. But at the top of their head, they have 3 little eyes at the top of their head. They're called ocilii. And we believe that those are used for navigation. So when they're flying, they can, with the course of where the sun's positioned in the sky and everything, they can, fly around and navigate and know where they're going. That's also where you're going to find their antenna, their mandibles, which of course are their jaws, and that's where they use their jaws to cut things up like paper or wood, or when they have the wax that comes out of their abdomens. Let me show you that. That's pretty cool. So when they have wax coming out of their abdomens, so that is where this beeswax actually comes from. It comes right out of their body. When they're eating good nutrition, they're getting nutritionally sound food, they are able to secrete this wax, and then they take it to their mandibles and they form it around, and then they make it into these honey cells. What do you want to ask me?
When bees get on flowers, they spread nectar.
That's right. Well, they suck up the nectar with their proboscis tongue. See, there's another example of that. And so they suck up that nectar. And so one of the things that people will often talk about is like, oh, honey is bee throw up, is bee vomit. It's actually not. Bees have 2 different stomachs. They have their stomach where their food goes into, but then they also have what's a honey stomach. It's a honey crop. And that's where the honey actually goes to. So it doesn't actually go into their digestive system. So the next part of their, middle part of their body is the thorax. And the thorax, of course, is where you're going to find their legs at. And you will also find their wings. So the interesting things with bees is it looks like they have 2 wings on each side of their body. But they actually have 4 wings. So on the 2 wings on each side, it's got hooks that hook together and form one big wing. But when they go in the hive, it would be really hard to be like walking around in your hive with your wings spread open everywhere you go. So they're able to basically like unvelcro these wings, and that way they can fold them down and lay them down, down to the sides of their bodies. And then of course the abdomen. And that's where we're going to find their stomach. Their heart is also in their abdomen, which is strange. You'll find the stinger, and you find the pollen basket and other parts of the bee anatomy parts. So the interesting thing also with bees, okay, so you have 3 different bees, and I don't know, I feel like my slides are out of order. But you have the worker bees, a drone bee, and a queen bee. The differences you're going to find with these are a drone bee, he's shorter, he's rounder, he's fat body, a little fatness, got big, huge compound eyes. And the reason they have really, really big compound eyes is because they have to, when they mate, they do that while flying. So a queen bee will be flying, and they mate in while they're in flight. So he has to be able to spot her. And when he's amongst a bunch of other male bees and there's just one queen coming through, he's got to be able to spot her, find her, and fly faster than everybody else to be able to get the chance to mate with her. If he's lucky and he does get to mate with her, as soon as he mates with her and they split apart, he falls dead straight to the ground. That is the one sacrifice about being the king bee, is you don't get to live to actually be the king. So, and you know, a lot of people will ask, you know, why are there no king bees? And that is why, because the king doesn't survive. So the next one we got is the queen bee. She's in the middle, and you can see she's got this longer abdomen. She'll have that barbless stinger, and she's got this thorax area here is a lot bigger and shinier. She doesn't have quite as much hair. And then you'll have your worker bee. All worker bees are female bees. All worker bees have stings, and they will sting. They don't normally sting on purpose. You know, they don't sting just to sting because, again, like, you know, he had told us that worker bees, when they sting, they die. So they only do it for defense. It's last mechanism. They do know that that is the end of their lives if they have to defend it. They will defend their hive and themselves to the death if they need to. Of course, most of us will. They will be able to sting you one time. Sometimes they get lucky and they're able to pull that barb out and not have their intestines come out with them, and then they retain their stinger and then do have the ability to sting you again. And sometimes they will. When they do sting, also they let off a pheromone. It kind of smells a little bit like bananas. And that's what makes the other bees also come to you to attack you. The queen bee can lay about 2,000, up to about 2,000 eggs a day also. So she stays really busy, like laying just one after the other. So in this frame here, you can see the larva. So it starts out as eggs, and then as the nurse bees come and they give them some royal jelly and they put it down in there, and those little larvae just swim around in that royal jelly and just eat it up, and they get bigger and bigger. And there's the larva. And then again, like I said, after that, they once they get to that pupa stage, the bees will cap it over. And so at pupa stage, the cell gets capped over, and the bees will, that's when they finish forming. And so they get in that little spot there. So this is David. He's our beekeeping president. This is pictures of his hive here. And you can see with the different hives, there are different heights because of how strong that hive is. You can see in that one hive, it's got all the bees out front. That's a really good hive. David did really, really good making honey this year. If you can see the boxes here, those two bottom boxes, that's these boxes that I brought here, those are called brood boxes, and that's where the bees actually live and do what they're supposed to do. They live in those. Those shorter half boxes that are above those, we call those are the honey supers. And those frames, so you can see the different size of the frames. Those frames are the ones that we put into those smaller frames, and that's where they store the honey and nectar. That's the excess stuff that we will take. We never take anything from the bigger boxes. That's always for them. We always want to make sure that they have enough resources for themselves, and we only take the extras. Picture of that black and white thing that I showed you guys. But you can see here the drone, I mean, he's nice and fuzzy. Oh, the other thing, with the drone bees, the only thing that we know that they really do is, in their life, is mate with the queen. So the drones do not collect nectar, they don't collect pollen, they don't clean, they don't guard. Drones have no stingers also. That's the other thing cool with the drone bee, is you can actually pick him up and play with him and hold him. He's not gonna hurt you, he has no stinger. So we do know that at the end of fall, going into winter, when there's less resources and less food, the one thing sad about being a boy bee though is the females only allow so many boys to stay in the hive throughout winter. And so a good majority of them are kicked out. And because they don't feed themselves, they don't know how to gather resources, and they don't know what to do for themselves because they haven't had to do anything, they actually get kicked out of the house and die. So they get kicked out of the hive, and they do die. So they die, during the winter. And like I said, just a few drones are allowed to stay and remain with it, throughout the winter. But most of them, like I said, they don't get to make it. So that's the other downside of being, a drone. Yeah, he doesn't have to do much, but he doesn't get to live very long either. Again, there's the queen with her long abdomen, and then the worker. And you can see too with the queen, she's got that darker, longer abdomen. She doesn't, her stripes aren't quite as prominent as that worker bee stripes. You see the worker bees, you can see their stripes a lot better. And then you'll see over here, and you'll see some drone bees and so forth. I brought some bees for us to actually see. And you can see the queen bee when she's among her other bees, how much different she looks. So I did not bring a queen bee with, I couldn't find her and it was taking too long. I would have been late. So I didn't manage to find her. So I don't have a queen bee for you guys to look at today, but I do have the cards where we can, so you guys can spot them.
Like trying to,
huh?
Is that why they're kind of scattered and making some racket over there? So
Yeah, that's why they're very loud. So that was one of the things I was going to tell you guys about. So when the bees, when they become queenless, bees will let you know if they don't have a queen. So they will get they're very more agitated, and they will get loud. And they will kind of roar, and that's why you'll hear them when you come out. You know, we'll put them over there so y'all can get around to see them. But they're quite loud with their buzzing, and that's because they are starting to feel queenless. So the queens make a pheromone, and that's how they know that that's their queen and where they belong is by smell. So because there's no queen, and that pheromone smell that they were smelling is dwindling down, they're getting antsy and thinking they don't have a queen. So it'll be interesting when I go to put them back today, how they act. My bees have been good the last 2 days, but things could change. And then that's a really blurry picture of a drone bee. It's not a good picture, but you can see he's bigger and fatter than the rest. So again, we talked about the bees and their defense, and they do have a stinger, and it's a barbed stinger, and they will sting you. So most times too, so if a bee comes at you, so bees have their compound eyes, which is a bunch of eyes. You know, their eyes aren't like ours. We just have two. They're kind of like fly eyes. They're compound eyes. They have all, like, I forget how many eyes on each lens. But when they go to form a picture, you know, we just look at each other and we can see. I can totally see what you look like, and I can see what you look like. If we had compound eyes, we couldn't actually see very, very well. That's one of the reasons that bees will fly, and they kind of do this motion and kind of, you see them get in your face, and they're kind of, just kind of back and forth. They're doing that because they are getting a visual of you. They have to fly around and move so they can actually see you and get the picture of what you look like. And then as they're checking you out, that's also the time where, as I tell people, they're not going to sting on purpose unless you've gotten too close to their space. First off, I acknowledge them. Hey bee, I see you. I am here. And then I'll take 3 steps back. I don't want the bee in my face, because I don't want to be stung. I personally, that's why I wear a full suit. It hurts. So if she's still, kind of buzzing in my face, I might take 3 more steps. I might walk off a bit until she's, kind of out of my face and everything. The last thing you want to do is, bee! You go to start swinging and trying to swat at them as you're freaking out trying to run. Well, now this bee who's just been trying to look at you and get a visual sees these flailing things also. That's when the bee gets a little bit scared, and then the bee itself will be like, oh Lord, okay, now I'm going to get hurt. I need to sting and kill it before it kills me. That's how it works kind of in their mind. So if you got a bee up in your face, just try to get back away from it. I mean, really, and of course, I mean, if it's too much, you just do what you got to do. But like I said, that is a way to, if you got, a lonely bee that comes up at you, the best way to avoid, is to avoid getting stung is by getting away from the bee in a calm manner. So, products of the hive. So we all know that bees make honey. So honey is good for things like healing burns, soothing coughs, sore throat. It can help with your allergies. It can treat wounds. It can provide nutrients because it's really good to eat. So we know when they opened up the Egyptian tombs, they found jars of honey that were still good that were in the tombs with the Egyptians. Honey is the one food source that will never go bad. It cannot go bad. The only thing that honey can do is it can ferment, which if it's too much water content in honey, it'll ferment. And when it ferments, it turns into alcohol or vinegar. And so at that point, you can use it to, if it doesn't taste good, you can at least still use it to clean things. So it's still a useful product, but it technically never goes bad. Honey is actually a very nutritionally dense food. We don't know all the components that are in some of the, like royal jelly and the food that the bees give, feed like the queen and the worker bees and everything. We still don't know all the nutrients that are in them. There's still stuff in it we don't know, but we know it has a lot of great stuff in it. So, like I said, which is amazing because scientists know everything, and I was like, what? They still don't know everything that's in it. So, this is a honey extraction. So, David here, so when the bees capped over this whole entire frame here, so he will take it and he takes a knife and he cuts it open. Let me see if it'll play this. Okay, so it is going to play. So he's going to cut this. So he's cutting off the wax caps. So the wax caps will go down into this tank. At some point he will render that wax and make it into wax blocks. And then we use wax for other products like soap, candles. Sometimes it goes in lotions and so forth. But so he's taking out a spun frame. So that's what it looked like after it had already went through this spinner here. So the honey extractor, that big silver tank that he has there. So this is, the honey extractor extracts the honey by using centrifugal force. Notice, big scientific word, which means it spins it. It spins it really fast. The centrifugal force will sling that honey out of those cut open cells. And you can see it kind of being slung onto the walls here.
So that's the fancy way to sling honey.
Like I said, yes, that's the slinging of the honey, yes. So it collects on those walls and it'll eventually slowly drip down. It'll come out of this front honey gate, out of that tank. We run it through a strainer into a bucket. And then from that bucket, there's another honey gate, and we will open it up and pour it into a jar, put the lid on it, put a label on it, and then it's ready for you to sell or for you to consume or whatever. So like I said, the process of honey, it's really sticky work. It is hard work. It's hot work. It's dirty work. The bees do a lot of it, but like I said, there's a lot of it that we go through that we still have to do. One of the things as beekeepers, one of the reasons we are constantly into our bees, we're always inspecting them. We're making sure that they have all the things that they need, resources-wise. There's actually a queen there, that they're populating well, as there's a lot of pests and diseases. That's the other interesting things that I didn't realize when I became a beekeeper was it's more than just about bees. I learned about flowers, I've learned about products, and then I've also learned about pesticides and things like that, but I also learned about pests that we have to use pesticides for. So this here is a varroa mite. A varroa mite is basically like a tick.
I thought it was a tick, honestly.
So it sucks the fat body, which is called the hemoglobin, inside of the bee. And the fat body of the bee is kind of like the bee's blood. So if you imagine a tick, if you got a tick that was this big on you, that's the equivalent size of this varroa mite when it's on a bee. That's what it would be like if we were bee size. And I couldn't imagine having a tick on me this big. But the bees have, like I said, the varroa mites get on them. And they also bring in other pathogens and viruses and can make the bees really sick. So we're constantly in there treating them, putting in different stuff, making sure, testing, making sure that we don't have too many varroa mites or mite overload. So there's other pests that also happen inside the beehive, such as hive beetles. We have things like chalk root from funguses and many other different things. Winter bees can live up to 6 months, and the queen, she can actually live up to 5 years. She does her best laying in the first year to 2 years, and then after that she kind of dwindles down. But she is able to live up to 5 years, and she does roughly 2,000 up to 2,500 eggs a day. And then again, they flap their wings. They bring in water into the hive, and they'll flap their wings in the summertime to keep it cool, like with the water, using evaporation, kind of like their own air conditioning. They've figured out how to, not just fan, but, they kind of cool it with the water too. And then huddle together in the wintertime to stay warm. And there can be up to 50,000 bees in a beehive. And a good, healthy beehive, that's what we're hoping for. It's about 50,000 bees. So, which is a lot when you open it up and they're all there and you're just like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of bees. So, but that's this talk part. I wanted to share some stuff with you guys. So I wanted you guys to actually be able to get up and like touch and see some things and, just see what we brought and everything, and ask us any questions if y'all had any, okay?